So now I am going to talk about the role of America in the international order, which is titled Harbinger of Modernity. So these are the content, 5 parts. So first, the short introduction of this talk. So I have to say 3 points. The deeds of a certain politician do not represent the average citizen. The deeds of past administrations do not represent the country as it is now. And this is a discussion of history and reality, not a personal attack on values or whatever. So the second part is the Holy Roman Empire. So it is something old and is rarely mentioned now in the West and even less in the East. So it begins in the year of 800 and ends in the year of 1806. So basically it began with the war with sort of victory and ended in a war and in another victory. And the system actually inspired many American ideas as we know now. For example, constitutionalism and electoral college. So basically, as we know, Enlightenment intellectuals often see that as something very obsolete and very bad and very stupid, but it wasn't really so. In fact, Sweden and Denmark were deeply involved in it, and it was over 200 years longer than the longest Chinese dynasty Zhou. So then, related, let's talk about the Habsburg Empire. The Habsburg family was originally from Habsburg, Switzerland, and they were driven out by local people. It was a funny story of origin. And then it reigned Spain, Holy Roman Empire, especially the later stages, and Austria, and then the final one, the Austro-Hungary. Its motto was said. Its motto was said could be under law liberty. So you see, it's obviously authoritarian as it puts law, the rule of law, before liberty. Meanwhile, in America, people believe in liberty under law, which is more or less liberal democracy because people see liberty more important as the rule of law. And Austria, now a very small country, actually inherited more true German liberties and the cosmopolitan German spirit, while Germany, based on the Prussian nationalist and the militarist blueprint, has more non-German influences, causing the rise of radical aggression and narrow nationalism in Germany in its history. And now we have something interesting and maybe very old. So let's compare the old and the new. So in the old system, in old Europe, in old China, even in modern, let's say, Middle East, you have the systems on the left, monarchy versus republic, authority versus liberty. Here I have to say that authority does not mean power. It is like power, also restriction, but it's based on consent. It's not really forced or coercion or violence. Then in the old system you have hierarchy versus equality, like in modern ages, like especially in America. And then you have this interesting concept of subsidiarity versus centralization. Subsidiarity says that if the lower levels of authority could handle an issue, the higher levels, like the king, like the president, shouldn't get involved at all. But it is something very alien to us because in the modern state, in the modern sovereign state, the centralization is the norm, regardless whether it is democratic or not. So now here's the question: what is the system of the USA? According to historians, it could be said of a sort of a hybrid. You have the president behaving like a king, and you have the Senate roughly aristocracy, and then house democracy. Aside from that, you have this modern trinity of executive from the Enlightenment intellectuals. You have these executive, legal, and legislative branches. However, in the old system, like the Habsburg Empire, it's divided more than three with multiple layers and also overlaps. It's very complex, but let's say I think it's more organic. So let's talk about something newer. So World War One. So here's a map before World War One, and let's say this is a map not for static relations but for dynamic equilibrium. You have major powers of Britain, France, Germany, Austro-Hungary, and Russia. So it was a sort of a dynamic equilibrium. You had frequent wars but of low intensity. Here comes a new challenger, Woodrow Wilson, the founder of the Federal Reserve. And what he believed was something different from the older age and our age. He believed in a sort of ethno-nationalism, so he decided to disrupt the dynamic equilibrium. So he dismembered the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He forced Russia to stay in the war. And then he decided to liberate the Balkan states. And in fact, by doing so, he became the architect of the Wilsonian world order, where the USA serves as the only world police. So, what are the consequences of his policies? The first one, as you see here, post World War One Austro-Hungarian Empire, you see it's dismembered into various pieces. So let's say for Germany, it is way easier to conquer. You can just pick them up one by one. Let's say in World War Two. Besides, USA sent Germany a lot of financial aid after World War One, which means something to boost the ability for Germany to conquer these smaller states. In the long run, we see, like I said, the rise of Third Reich, and also now the Balkan states are still a powder keg, and the origin was this. Now let's talk about Russia. So because of the heavy burden of World War One, the February Revolution happened, and then after that we have a social democrat, let's say Kerensky, but he was forced by Wilson to still stay in the war. Otherwise, he would have to repay all the loans immediately. So the Russian people became even more angry and desperate. So what happened? October Revolution. USSR, USA's later arch enemy, was born here. As I said, Wilson's ethno-nationalism was his motive to dismember Austro-Hungary, but it did not work out very well for, let's say, Yugoslavia later. And under old monarchies, it was far less violent because it had this sort of old school diversity. It wasn't about nation state. It was about different nationalities, or actually different ethnic groups living side by side, serving, or let's say ruled remotely by the same king. And then now let's talk about World War II. First, there is a problem in this photo. This photo, Joseph Stalin began World War II together with Hitler by invading Poland together, and he wasn't punished. What it means is that USSR became even stronger, or at least became not so much weaker after World War II. And then in the Cold War, it meant a great trouble for the USA. So it was, in a way, a mistake. And then here, the Kuomintang, the old Chinese regime, it was supported by the USA, but half-heartedly, causing China to become communist later. And then the communist China was a really big problem, a headache for the USA for a long time. And until now, between China and the USA, there's great tension as we know it. So I am simply elaborating the details and the cause and effect of history. I'm not blaming anyone. But then here we see something interesting. Post-war, we see two schools of foreign policy in the US. The first one, the Democratic Jimmy Carter. He valued liberal democracy more than the US self-interest, or let's say anti-communism. And it caused Iran to become what it is now, from a sort of old monarchy. And the second school is, let's say, the Republicans, Ronald Reagan. So national interest is more important than promoting liberal democratic republics. So because of that, the USA founded Saddam Hussein, Al Qaeda, etc. But then these forces became later foes. And if you look at them, they share some commonalities. Both are Wilsonian, and both require the USA to become the world police. And this order is actually monopolar. Then one would wonder, what is the alternative for that? So here's my own opinion, and it might be very wrong, but let's talk about that. Liberal Democratic Republic is the modernist favorite piece of cake, but it requires many preconditions. And even in the USA, it is not that stable as one would want. And the second point is that Wilsonianism, that is neoconservatism, causes many Americans and non-Americans, such as Vietnamese, to die in vain. This is a fact. So repeating that will probably not bring any change or any meaningful improvement. And let's say, what do we need? For many in the West, especially North America, they see the world into two. One very advanced and developed, very westernized, and the other side we have a very slow and backward world. They want to teach the bad students of the world all the goodies or the good systems and ideas from them because it was their experience. But then what they should do instead is to let the slow and backward, the monarchies, the emirates, the chieftains, the kings, etc., to grow on their own will, because it took the West many centuries to become what it is now. And the USA should not be a harbinger of modernity, because modernity is not the only answer. And above all, mutual respect is key to peace. Thank you.